his views on vital issues facing Congress today on News Views.
Well, good morning to you. Welcome to News Views once again. I'm Krashesky. There is one new Chicago area congressman, and that's Republican Peter Roskam in the Northwest Suburban 6th District. And here we see at that time he was a state senator out there last fall campaigning door to door and meeting the voters and in some cases their pets apparently. All of this was part of his successful race against Democrat Tammy Duckworth. Roskam once worked for the man that he has succeeded, and you see here fellow Republican Henry Hyde. Hyde, of course, retired from Congress after 32 years in the U.S. House. The new congressman, a bit about him. He's a graduate of Glenbard West High School, where he was a student senate president at that time, and also a graduate of the University of Illinois. Went on to get a law degree from IIT Chicago-Kent College of Law, and then was elected to the Illinois House in 1993. Went on to the state senate in the year 2000. He also ran a program that provided scholarships for disadvantaged youngsters, and you may or may not know that he's a long-distance bicyclist. He once crossed the country from California to Virginia. That alone is an accomplishment. U.S. Representative Peter Roskam is my guest today. You're taking a little bit of a relaxed approach today. No bike riding today.
No bike riding today, but it's great to be here, Alan.
Congratulations on your win, and it's great to have you here. You certainly have a lot on your plate, as does the Congress in general. And let's talk first of all about the situation in Iraq and how you in some way assess as to whether we're doing the right thing or not at this particular moment. As you know, the month of May was just a horrendous month for the deaths involving American troops. The surge idea, is it working at this point? We do hear, of course, that as American troops wind up in areas perhaps where they haven't been in such a high profile recently, we may see an increase in casualties. Is that how you read it, or not necessarily?
Well, as you pointed out, this is an issue that's front and center in the Congress, and it's an issue that our country is really deeply divided on right now, and that is, where do we go from here? You know, I took the oath of office in January, and it was after the decisions were made to go to Iraq. So then you come in as a new member of Congress, and the question before you is, what's the next step? The president has made it clear that his vision is that we're going to stay in Iraq, at least in the foreseeable future, and finish the job. The question before the Congress is, do you fund that? Do you put in a timetable? What does a timetable look like? And so forth. I think the beginning reports that are trickling back now about the insurgents, some of their attitudes, their interest in sitting down on a ceasefire are hopeful. But this is a very pivotal time. I think the Iraqis have a great deal of responsibility at this point, at this particular point in this venture, to do everything that they can to realize the great treasure that we've placed, the great cost to America in terms of our young men and women who've lost their lives and suffered greatly, the great financial cost that our country has put there. But we need to think clearly about what the consequences are of failure. I believe one of the reasons that we've been successful in terms of domestic tranquility, no domestic attacks since September 11th, is in part due to the fact that we're playing offense for the first time. We've responded to Islamic jihadism around the world, but for 20 years was essentially left unanswered. We didn't respond militarily. And the other component is the Patriot Act, I think, is helping to keep us safe.
In Iraq itself, though, and there's been discussions about this recently as to what degree does the United States now attempt to engage what have been the leaders of insurgent groups, if they can be identified, first of all, in some form of dialogue, if they even wish to talk. Does that seem to be an appropriate way to approach this at all, do you see?
Well, this is where you lean on the leadership of General David Petraeus, who is basically the American expert on counterinsurgency movements. And you say to him, look, what are the tools that you need to complete this job? And that's where you rely on literally the generals who are on the ground to come back and tell the Congress what they need. I must say General Petraeus has come back and briefed the Congress several times in closed-door sessions, but on the background, on what's happening, what are the resources that he needs. But I think, the next timetable in this national drama that we're having is going to be in September when the supplemental funding runs out. Right. And then the question then becomes, where do you go from there?
Would you oppose any form of timetable attached to that?
No, I'm opposed to a hard timetable. I think a hard timetable basically signals to our enemies, relax and reload. The Americans don't have the staying power. And how that has an impact on American credibility in the future future, I think would have an adverse impact. There's reasonable people that take a different approach on that, and I understand it, but I would not vote in favor of a hard timetable. Now, that's not to say that you don't put benchmarks in. You've got to have pressure on the Iraqi civilian leadership in particular to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to quell their own unrest.
Much more to talk about. We're going to take a short break right now. We'll be right back with Congressman Peter Roskam in just a moment.